come with me to the Dominix99 YouTube channel because today we are counting down the top 10 albums of 2025. Yes, it is that time again. We are here at the end of 2025, a really awful year, all things considered, but not an awful year for music. I won't start off this video saying that it's one of the best years of music I've ever lived through, which I did say last year for 2024, and I still stand by that opinion. But we had some really fantastic music this year. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Dominic. I am a drummer, a bass player, a shabby music producer. I've been writing about music for years now. I've also amassed a fiscally irresponsible amount of vinyl, and I've been making these formal top 10 lists for the past 2 years now. So this is the third installment, baby. Now, I try to listen to as many albums in a year as I can. I try to cover most of the big blockbuster releases. That being said, I am one person. I didn't listen to every single album that came out this year. That's simply impossible. But I got a really large sample size, so I feel confident in this top 10. And if by chance I listen to an album that came out this year that I wish was on the list, I will mention that in next year's video. Actually, my 2024 list aged really well. There's no albums I listened to after the fact that I would have put on the list now. Before we actually jump into the top 10, I want to shout out some albums that I loved but just barely missed the list. So rapid fire really quick, here are some albums that didn't make the list but you should definitely check out if you haven't.
Overweight freaks ride around on wheelchairs, motorized by electric motors made by goblins in a factory overseas. I am a tenderfoot for the first time in my life. It's fine that I'm not perfect.
I know what's expected of me. Besties night and day. Remember when I said he shouldn't treat you
This time is all mine.
Okay, and with the honorable mentions out of the way, we are now jumping into number 10.
Falling in love.
I think it's really funny that the movie that was paired with this album ended up being complete shit, but this album, it's pretty good. Not just pretty good, I think this album is a fantastic closer to The Weeknd's career. I think in a trilogy of albums, those albums being After Hours, Dawn FM, and now this one, Hurry Up Tomorrow, I think this one feels really final. It feels really cinematic. I'd be surprised if you haven't heard this album this year, but this is a pop and R&B album, and it's just immaculately produced. Unsurprising coming from The Weeknd, his production usually sounds really expensive, but this album feels really expansive. It feels like Abel put a bow on his career with this album. The lyrics feel really apocalyptic, and I really like that quality about the album, as The Weeknd sort of talks about death and things ending. Obviously, he talks about his career ending. He's reflecting on his success up until this point. He's also being really honest about having to step back from the Weeknd moniker. But yeah, the tunes at their core are just really great. You have the fantastic opener, Wake Me Up, which was co-produced by Justice, so of course it sounds fantastic. You have really lush production on songs like Take Me Back to LA and Drive. And the end of this album features some of The Weeknd's most cinematic songs to date. I'm talking about the title track, I'm talking about Without a Warning, I'm talking about Red Terror, and of course Abel's vocals sound amazing as always. People criticize this album for being really bloated, but I kind of think Abel earned an album this long. And while I can't lie to you and say that every track here is an absolute banger, I think every track here does feel essential to the story of The Weeknd, and that's why I think this is such a great album. Let's go to number 9 now.
No hard feelings. We're not leaving. While you're sleeping.
No Hard Feelings by The Beaches is one of the most fun records of the year, I think, which is ironic because a lot of the lyrics have to do with breakups. But on this album, the Beaches as a unit are sort of finding solace in their sort of party girl status. They're finding comfortability in letting their hair down, and they're doing so by making just, again, they did this on Blame My Ex, and they're doing it here on this album, just some of the catchiest and stickiest pop rock you will ever hear. I'm not going to pretend like this album is breaking any new ground or being all that inventive, but the Beaches have nailed their sound down to a science on this album, and it is just so sweet on the ears. Like, they know how to make some sweet ass hooks. The warm sound of those indie rock guitars and those crisp drums, and of course lead singer Jordan Miller's just absolutely intoxicating vocals. I love her voice. Yeah, this album is an absolute blast. She ate that. Okay, this is number 8. I am so glad that Nina Geraci popped up on my radar this year because this is one of the best EDM albums I've heard in a while. I mean, just sound-wise, these beats are so intelligently produced. They make great use of texture and they hit hard all the time. There's a lot of charm in this album, and part of that's thanks to Nina Geraci's vocals. I mean, her voice is just channeling like online e-girl aesthetics really well. And this album is kind of a journey of self-exploration, and it's kind of about her realizing that her talents in making music come from how she's rejected standard ways of making music, I guess more traditional as some would call it. And she sort of talks about her progression to where she is now. And honestly, the album kind of comes across as a love letter to electronic music and how the music making tools that we have at our disposal now has allowed her to create such an awesome album. And the album's really thematically focused. Again, look at that cover art, look at the title. It's a singular vision that Nina Geraci is shooting for on this album, and she nails it. Cute and charming, but also really hard hitting. Great EDM album.
Yeah, so we're going to move on to number 7, and that is...
So if one day you get out in a loop of boredom burnout, I'll swim upstream again, show you all the hooks in my mouth.
This album is explosive, mind-blowing. It's the Callous Cowboys at their creative peak. This is how you do artistic evolution. This is a batshit crazy mathcore album, so of course you're getting odd time signatures. This album definitely isn't for everyone, but if you're a fan of the genre, this is a staple release. The reason why this is such an artistic evolution is because the band are stretching a little bit outside of genre conventions on this album. They're bringing in horns, they're bringing in straight up pop hooks, they're bringing in much more low-key and atmospheric moments for an album that feels really ambitious. And all of this is tied together by this concept. This is a concept album where you're sort of walking through this museum of failure, and each song is like a vignette of something traumatic or something to do with a relationship ending poorly, until you get to the end, the final song, Country Song in Reverse, and it just has one of the biggest and most intense emotional payoffs of any song I've heard all year. Every time I get to the end of that song, the hair is standing on the back of my neck, goosebumps up and down my arms, and it all works because the journey up to that point is frankly tiring, but in a good way. A really colorful album, you know, there's some jazz influence on here. I mentioned the horns earlier. Just an absolutely dizzying album in the best way. Really fucking proud of this band. Oh shit, you got a little something right here. Looks like number 6 on this list. Here, let me wipe that off for you.
I wonder where you are. I wanted you to show me the way around the city walls, the way on through.
Yes, it is Breach. Man, I am so happy these boys stuck the landing with this album. So Breach is ending the story and the lore that 21 Pilots have been building for basically a decade now. And while this isn't a super lore-heavy album, I think they have come full circle with their sound in a really satisfying way with this release. I mean, I hear influences of Regional at Best on this album, but I'm also hearing hints of a bold new direction for the band, like The Contract, for instance. That's a straight-up hyperpop song. I don't think 21 Pilots have made a song like that before. But some of the band's best work is on this album. I'm talking about City Walls, I'm talking about Drum Show. I mean, just 2 behemoth songs in their discography. But like always, the rest of the album is a really intelligently put together collection of songs about mental health, ambitions, or destiny not being met. And one quality I've always liked about 21 Pilots songs, at least in the context of the lore, is that even if they don't seem explicitly lore related, you can always tie it back to the lore in some way or another. So fans that are super into the story can tie it back into that, but people who have no idea what the story is can definitely enjoy this music. And this is a fantastic alternative rock record. I think it has Tyler's arguably best vocal performances across the record, definitely the most screams across any 21 Pilots album. And while I don't like it as much as Clancy from last year, this does feel like a more satisfying conclusion to the story. And man, this album is just, it's addictive as hell. I know I'm the biggest fucking 21 Pilots nerd ever, but man, it's so addicting to come back to this album. And to this day, they're still taking risks in their music making, bringing their signature genre-hopping style to this album. I mentioned The Contract, but I'm also thinking about Center Mass. That's like a skittery, sort of jazzy rap track that turns into something entirely different by the end. And I just love that they're still making fresh, exciting music this far into their career. Number 5!
They asked which way should I go, and through cigarette smoke they said, child, how would we know?
I'm going to be real with you guys. This is the year where I got fully into Florence and the Machine. Obviously, I knew who she was and who the band was prior to this on account of their hits, but this was when I actually took the dive, and Everybody Scream is fucking fantastic, dude. I mean, it came at a great time. This is like slow burning art rock singer-songwriter music that has this rustic energy about it and sort of a witchy, creepy undertone, which made it the perfect release for Halloween. She knew what she was doing, and it paid off because Florence Welch is just an incredible vocalist. Even if the music isn't popping off, like, I'm fully engaged in the way she writes and the way she sings. This album is actually really well crafted, like, dissection of fame and how that intersects with sexuality and gender. As the Everybody Scream in the title is most likely referring to the crowd, and it's almost like she's asking the audience to scream in order to distract herself from her own issues, whether that's personal or having to do with the music industry at large. And there's reflections on here about her fame and if she's done everything right, how men seemingly have it way more easy in the music industry. And it really feels like she's earned this specific album for where she is in her career because she's had an amazing career. And there's always an emotional payoff around every corner with the songs on this album. And just some really cool sound palettes, especially on like the title track and Witch Dance. But even a song like Buckle, which has probably one of my favorite choruses of the year, is just an emotional gut punch and is incredibly sweet on the ears. And just a really like aesthetically focused project. Again, I think it just mainly comes down to the really excellent songwriting. Yeah, can I get a vanilla frosty and a large number 4?
Seen them in a different light, goddamn what I done did. What have I promised him? The chances are so slim, I can't have brought that kid. Laughing now, mumbles, can't believe that I was finished. Look to me, says no time to waste. Boy, let's get back in it, come on.
Magic Alive, dude. This is the best hip-hop rap album of the year. Don't tell me it's Clips, because it's not. It's Magic fucking Alive. Dude, I'm so glad I dived into McKinley Dixon's music because this is one of the most colorful albums I've heard in so long, because it is a jazz rap album that is constantly evolving and shifting. These songs refuse to stay still for a second. It's a really short album, but I actually kind of like that quality about it because it's everything you want and nothing you don't. I mean, just the instrumentals across this thing are just so lush and detailed. I mean, the pure musicality it takes to assemble songs that sound like this is insane. The bass line, the horns, the strings, and McKinley Dixon is like larger than life, dude. He is so fucking fun to listen to. He's just like the embodiment of Riz. He's constantly changing his voice and his flow is just immaculate. And on top of that, it's a concept album. It's actually about resurrecting an old friend. I admit the concept isn't as fleshed out as I want it to be, but it adds another layer to this album. And the album's about a lot of things. It's about friendship and family, but it's also about McKinley Dixon's upbringing, his success, and the optics of success. And this is just like a euphoric feeling album. Like this and the Beaches album, I can kind of just like put on whenever I want, and I'll always fall back under its spell. Just like one of my favorite voices in hip hop right now, I think. All right, top 3. We are in masterpiece territory right now. I would call each of these 3 albums a bona fide masterpiece, starting with this one. You want to talk vocals? Listen to Tether. Anastasia has one of the most unique voices alive right now, I think. And she's putting it to good use, making this like really minimalist folk music that just like speaks to the soul. She's got the really calculated, like heart-wrenching and sometimes heartwarming songwriting of like a Sufjan Stevens album. But it's such a striking album instrumentally because all of these instruments, and again, sometimes it's completely minimalist, are recorded like it sounds like you're there in the room. The rustic guitars and the occasional string embellishment thrown in. And again, Anastasia's vocals are so raw and emotional. Like you feel every word she's saying. And it's like pure poetry, this album is. And it's a really healing album too. I mean, I get really emotional listening to this thing. It's like the perfect soundtrack to like a coming of age or like romantic indie movie, but not in like a cheesy or corny or overdone way. And I'm so shocked that this album isn't getting the flowers it deserves. I'm not seeing it on like top 10 lists this year. Like I have friends that show me folk albums all the time, but none of them are comparing to this album as of late. It's never boring and it's always gorgeous. With number 2, we are moving from the light to the actual, like, darkest of darkness.
Is it not fun to feel many other ways?
Ethel Cain put out 2 albums this year. One of them is Willoughby Tucker, and the other is this one. I think people probably expected me to put the other one on this list. I liked Willoughby Tucker, but man, this album is... I don't think I've had a listening experience like the first time I listened to this album, and I will literally never forget it. In a dark room on a stormy night, headphones on, very little lighting, I let this droning ambient album absolutely surround me, and I was like completely transfixed in this hour-and-a-half experience. Now, this is not an album that I would put on at the drop of a hat. Like I said, this is a very ambient, droning album. Objectively speaking, not a lot happens. But listening to this album is like looking into an infinite blackness, and you start seeing things manifest in the darkness. And this wouldn't be possible if the production wasn't so damn good. Like I said, it completely envelops you, and you're hearing all the little details. Like, this album does not work unless you're listening on really good headphones. And even though this isn't an album that I would normally, I guess, say is my cup of tea, somehow every time I put this album on, and again, it's not very often, I have to set time aside to listen to it, I'm just pulled back in. It is a suffocating depiction of love, of sexual shame, which really speaks to me as a queer person. One of the standout moments of this album is when Ethel Cain keeps repeating I love you" over again until it absolutely loses all meaning. And there's so much to unpack in just that, because you don't know if it's genuine, like, transfixion on someone, or if it's like she keeps saying I love you as if to try to convince herself. So there aren't a lot of lyrics on this album, but when they do come around, like, you have to hang on every word because every word is important. Maybe it's cheap of me putting an album like this here because it's more of an experience than anything, but fuck it, this is an experience that stayed with me way longer than Willoughby Tucker did. I mean, you want to talk about albums like transporting you to new places? This is it. And there's even hope at the end, because it seems like Ethel Cain is pushing past some of that sexual shame, and thank God there's some relief at the end, because again, this album is just absolutely suffocating. If you're not going to listen to this album actively, it's not going to work for you. You have to be an active listener. But if you do listen actively, the darkness will repay you with just an incredible experience.
What's the number 1 album, Hex?
That's right, it's Lonely People with Power. All right, guys, this album, this is one of the best albums I have ever heard in my life. In my life. I'm talking top 5 of all time for me. And this was a band I started listening to this year with this album. And I'm sorry, Deaf Heaven fans, but this is way better than Sunbather. This album is a soul-shaking experience that combines black metal with shoegaze for a totally noisy album that buries just the most blood-curdling and emotionally potent vocal performances under a layer of guitars and throttling drums. But the magical thing about this album is it's not like black metal like you may be thinking. Because yes, this album is intense and ferocious, but it's also incredibly beautiful and awe-inspiring. I mean, every song here makes me ascend to the heavens. And that goes double for the penultimate track, Winona, which is just... I struggle to find the words to explain how epic and intense this song is. I feel like I'm meeting God every time I listen to this song. But I will say, listen to the whole album front to back. It's a long one, but it makes the release of the final 2 tracks hit way harder when you have the context of the full album. And the context of the album, which you're sort of clued in on with the album art and the title, is that this is an album about grooming, about where people who are lonely end up. I saw an interview with George, the lead singer, and he explained something that a lot of us sort of know if you're growing up in the age of the internet currently. And he explained that people who seek power generally get that thirst from being alone or not having sort of a loving figure in your life. And that comes through on some like really personal reflections on this album, as the speaker, who I assume to also be the lead singer, talks about an experience of he himself getting groomed. And the album at large sort of talks about this idea of what we're supposed to be and how who we are is really formed by the people around us, or the lack thereof. One criticism I see of this album a lot is that the vocals are a little bit buried underneath the absolute intensity of these instrumentals. But I stand firm that mixing decision, that intentional decision in the production process, adds to the emotional intensity of the words with which the lead singer is saying. As every song feels like the speaker is trying to punch through some like emotional gateway. And this album reaches heights that I haven't heard in like virtually any other album, and that includes metal music. I mean, these guitar tones are just absolutely sublime, and the drum work is just incredible too. Deaf Heaven knows that this is a long and intense album, so they include moments of reprieve. They include some of these more low-key and abstract sort of interlude tracks they call incidentals, and they sort of help pad out the themes of the album. But man, this is like the most gorgeous metal album I've ever heard. And like I said, if you're confused as to why I'm using the word gorgeous to describe a metal album, you gotta listen to this thing. This is truly a monumental release in my mind. It is an essential album. And my cat agrees, so if you disagree, you disagree with my cat. And if you disagree with my cat, let's just say you're going to be meeting someone tonight. That's it. That's my top 10 albums of 2025. If you like this video, please leave a like. Let me know your top 10 down in the comments. Again, this is all just my opinion, so if you disagree, tell me why. Be polite. But again, thanks so much for watching. Hit that subscribe button, and I will see you guys in the next video.